Inside your mind lies the divine. You're never alone, you can't be outgrown. You're the God, you are the one. Open your heart, stop trying to run.
Running is a beautiful thing. Running makes a magical king. You can run in the flesh and that is great, but if you run in your mind, that's wasting your faith.
Shut up, sit down and sit still. It's time for thrill.
Get ready to scream when you witness this scene. It's the inside of your head, and it's probably wishing you were dead. Let's remove the dread.
God waits inside your mind. Why? 'Cause you are the divine. You and God are one. When you don't know this life isn't fun, you deserve to be free. Your mind holds the key.
Unlock your authenticity when you sit inside and be your own sovereign discerning self. When you learn to pretend you are an elf, touch the magic of this world. Touch the magic of your soul. It's waiting for you to unfold. Shut up, sit down and sit still. It's time for a thrill. Get ready to scream. Ready to witness the scene. It's the inside of your head, and it's probably wishing you were dead. Let's remove the dread.
Meditation, it's called stillness, it's called life. Breathe deeply, breathe truly, breathe completely.
Breathe fully, breathe, just breathe.
Deep into your soul, use the wisdom instrument of your nose. Pull the air into your soul, awaken within. It will bring you a grin in your heart, and a grin within your soul. This grin will improve your entire world. This advice is for your own good. It's as solid as cedar wood. Know that I love you deeply, but listen to this complete loop. Shut up, sit down and sit still. Time for a thrill. Get ready to scream. When you witness this scene, it's the inside of your head, and it's probably wishing you were dead. Let's remove the dread. Meditate to be great, to be great.
Meditate.
Amazing introduction song by Transcending Ascension herself. What is going on, everybody? I want to welcome you to the first Sunday service of the True Church of True Christ. This is something Transcending Ascension and I have been talking about, something we've been trying to put together for a long time. We think it's time we bring back real Christianity to the sphere of this existence and what true Christ is in our eyes. So if you would all join me and Transcending Ascension here, we are going to do the Lord's Prayer, but we are going to do a special version of the Lord's Prayer today. We are going to do the direct Lord's Prayer that has been translated directly from Aramaic as opposed to the canonical version. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to say this version, and then we're going to break it down a little bit after we get done saying it before we head into our Sunday sermon for a championship mindset to healing. This version of this prayer to me is just hits different. It resonates deeper from the heart center. It kind of, just the way the words come off and the descriptive symbolism of these words in this version of the prayer, to me, just deeply resonates with me. It always has. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen so everybody can see, and we can say this together. All right, everybody, here we go. O birther, father, mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us, make it useful as the rays of a beacon show the way. Unite our I can to yours so that we walk as kings and queens with every creature. Create the divine cooperation for many selves, one voice, one action. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. Forgive our hidden past, the secret shames, as we consistently forgive what others hide. Deceive neither by the outer nor the inner. Free us to walk your path with joy. From you is born all ruling will, the power and life to do. The song that beautifies all, from age to age, it renews. Amen. So that is the Lord's Prayer from the direct Aramaic translation. Diana, what are your thoughts on that one?
I absolutely love it. And I learned metaphysically what the actual, like the shorter condensed version meant. And I've taught lessons on it, and they were always well received. But in those smaller words, you're like digging out. And some could say it was making leaps of assumption just based on how we know the energy of God works. But then here we go with this. And that pretty much proved it. It had everything that was in the metaphysical, like bring out of like the shorter version. Plus, it had extra things that were just beautifully put, like the shame part. Like we mentioned that yesterday in the collective panel. How like every human, it's part of that polarization that makes us physical, but it can create this shame within us, within each and every one of us, especially like as you're a child and you think you're the only weirdo. And depending what kind of adult you are, you might go many, many years thinking you're the only weirdo with thoughts just popping into your head. They're like, whoa. But this right there, like that, forgive the shame as we've forgiven others of their shame. And that part right there, it's so key of allowing and forgiving of that human nature that Christ was all about. And that the whole thing's beautiful, but that right there had like an extra spark that's missing from the shorter version.
One of my favorite parts of this whole prayer is there's actually a couple. So we have unite our I can to yours so that we walk as kings and queens with every creature. Like that to me is one of my favorite parts for this very reason. It shows us developing that love and appreciation for the divine creation in all of its aspects and all of its expressions. Because the animals, it says every creature, the animals are just as much of a divine expression as we are. And while, yes, we still use animals for food in some instances, some people choose not to, some people are moving away from that. But still, there's so many people who are understanding that every aspect of this divine creation is precious. So that's one thing I really like about that. And plus uniting our I can to yours is also, for the will of the divine, that is what our I can is. We want to work with this divine creation. We want to work with our divine nature. So that is like the ultimate goal for us on our spiritual evolution at this point in time. So we have that unite our I can to yours. And then we have create in me divine cooperation from many selves, one voice, one action. Now, this is where another one that I really like about this version of the prayer as well is because we have many aspects of ourself, right? Sometimes we have many different voices we can experience from ourselves as well, and we have these different aspects of ourselves, but we're combining them, we're uniting them. It says from many selves, one voice, one action. So to me, this is the consolidation of, in a lot of ways, our 10 bodies, these different aspects of ourselves to be in alignment with that divine nature as well. So that's where you're absolutely right. There's a lot of metaphysical goodness in the condensed version, but it's really nice to see it's really nice to see this version as well, because we can see where a lot of the metaphysical aspects of the short version were drawn from.
Yes, agreed completely. And in fact, I would say like the meaning was always meant to be metaphysical in nature, because this is what we hope to bring to people, is that everything about God is metaphysics. So right from the get-go, the church saying metaphysics is evil and satanic.
Diana, you froze up. Are you there? No, I'm with you. I'm gonna play off of this real quick. No, I'm with you. And we're going to dive into that a little bit, because that's something I really want to talk with everybody about here tonight. But what were you saying? Sorry, you freed up again.
No, that's
Again.
okay.
Yeah.
It's that the metaphysics are the truest aspects of God. This is what my passion's always been about, and why I became a minister to begin with, because people deserve to know the root of God. You want to get to the deepest aspects you can find of your own divine nature, made in the image of God. That's very real. The way that we can manifest is unlike any other. It's why the human is such a big deal, and why we have so much more to like traverse through this world in than other beings are said to have. And we can witness that ourselves, from the trees to the animals, that the human is the most complicated being. And this is why we are here to like unpack and dive into the metaphysics, because the metaphysics are God. That doesn't mean certain things didn't take advantage of it, like witchcraft and Satanry and all that stuff. That doesn't mean it can't be taken advantage of. Everything can be taken advantage of if you let it, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Metaphysics are still the root of God. They are the scientific explanation of God mixed in there. That's quantum physics and metaphysics are basically the same thing. And we're coming more online to realize that and to see it. And if we put things in a dogmatic box, then we stay limited ourselves. And that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted us to not have power. They wanted us to not realize we could create our own reality. This is why they manipulated the teachings of Christ, because he was coming to try to bring back our power, because we've always had it. The only thing that was missing was our awareness of that.
Oh, absolutely. And you and I both feel the same way on this as well. We were discussing this in our last show we had last week, where I truly feel that Christ was just like one of us. And this is the biggest secret in my eyes as to why they have altered and doctored the original scriptures and a lot of the history of Christ himself, or this embodiment of Christ. And this is where the biggest power grab, the biggest secret. He was just like us, at least in my eyes. And we can look at some of the other scriptures that didn't make it into the canonical the canonical Bible, such as the Gospel of Barnabas, where Barnabas was a disciple of Jesus. He wasn't really a covered disciple of Jesus in the main canonical text, but there's tons of evidence for his existence. He too, just like us, has had a beef with Paul. But even in the
Bible, but like as a side, almost stooge character, like he's not given, like you said, he's not given his own words, he's not given his own canon. So continue.
No, you're all good. And no, he's not. So, and even in the Gospel of Barnabas speaks as Jesus was a human being who just realized his divine nature and the divine nature of this existence. And he came into a full realization of it, we could say, something that, we're all working hard to achieve, we're working towards. But Jesus I'll digress and say Jesus was a lot like us. So they had to, in a lot of ways, make him look perfect, make him look too godly, something that is unattainable for the average person, in order to kind of dissuade us and to kind of, drop us instead of embodying these teachings. Because to me, I know we see this in modern Christianity a lot nowadays. They talk about worship, but we see very few modern Christians actually embodying the teachings of Christ. And if we're going to go along those lines, I do think embodying those teachings of Christ would be the best kind of worship you could do. I mean, really, if we're looking at it from that angle, although both you and I know that Christ didn't want us to worship him. He wanted us to embody his teachings. And that's where I think, they made everything seem unattainable. They ended up, doctoring the Bible. They ended up diluting the scriptures, and kind of putting a little bit of a different PR spin on Jesus being the Son of God. So no, I'm 100% with you. I think this is a good first show where we can kind of break into this subject and we can kind of describe what true Christ truly is in our eyes and what it means to us.
Yeah, 100%, because it is so much more than we were led to believe. And Jesus is so much more than we were led to believe. Was his parentage lined up for exactly what he became? Probably. So was ours. All of us have been looking in and realizing our parents, though they might not have been perfect, where DNA.
You froze up, Diana. But no, I'm 100% with you. There we go. There, you're back. All right, cool.
But my own parents had this like Hollywood movie story where they were aligned to make me, and they were both like Rh negative. And I think it's very interesting, even me and you. I'm O negative, female, yin. You're O positive, masculine, positive. Like, it's everything aligns exactly how it should. And so I'm sure Jesus's upbringing did align. And whatever the situation was, whether it was divine conception just straight through the God stars, or if higher beings, which is probably more likely, injected her like artificial insemination, or Jesus could have straight up been a bastard. She could have lied to Joseph. You never know. Or Joseph could have been his blood father. There's so many things that can come about in this situation that actually does not belittle anything of Jesus. Like, people get obsessed with the Immaculate Conception because they have been starved for magic. But magic is everywhere, people, and you can manifest anything you want in this entire world. It's just simply getting your mind to believe it. And so we don't need a fanciful magic story for Jesus to be just as powerful as he was. And the last 2,000 years of advancement after he's been on this earth is the proof right there.
I would 100% agree. I think what's happened to a lot of the Christian community is the focus has been diverted to all of these wrong areas. Like you were just saying, being obsessed with the Immaculate Conception. I know there's a lot of debate still on the Trinity. And if the Trinity is not said a certain way, you're not going to be saved. Or if you're not saying it this way, you're not going to be saved. I think the focus has been drawn to all of these wrong places when we should be focusing on embodying these teachings. And one of the biggest mistakes I think that modern Christians make nowadays is they view the church as a source of authority. And this is where I think the tides got turned, because the number one thing I want to just relay to everybody, the church is a place of congregation and the church is a place of discussion. That's all it's for. It is not an authority on how to interpret the scriptures. You are that authority on how these scriptures should be interpreted. As a Christian, your only authorities are the God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There is no church, there is no priest, there is no minister, not even us. Okay, there's no pastor that is an authority to you. So that is just the one thing I want to throw out there, as we dive into this sermon just a little bit further, because I feel this is where a lot of the cross-contamination has. The modern church has taken your power away to interpret these scriptures on your own. This is the biggest thing Jesus was trying to relay to us, this embodiment of Christ, that we don't need a medium to connect with the divine, the Heavenly Father. Okay, we have that ability innately within us. Okay, and we are all these, even as it says in the Gospel of Thomas, the kingdom of God is within you, and without you, you have the kingdom of God within you. And you are capable of interpreting scriptures. You are capable of being a sovereign Christian and having the wherewithal and the know-how to know what is proper for your salvation, what is proper for your spiritual evolution. And that's really what Christ was trying to say. And this is why he was persecuted in our eyes, because he was telling everybody that you did not need a church. You did not need a synagogue to connect with the divine. And of course, we see how, Christianity has been taken from its roots and it's been pushed into what it is today. So one of our goals for this, guys, is we're trying to bring it back to its roots. We're trying to bring it back to what it once was. And we're trying to showcase how metaphysics actually works synergistically with Christianity. It is not of the devil. It is not of Satan. The biggest thing I want to relate to everybody is we have to have discernment at this point in time with the modern Christian movement, what they call evil. Okay. And what this does is it just closes them off. All right. It closes them off to any expansion. It closes them off to any new ideas or discussion. And so that's what we're here trying to do. We're trying to squash that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much illumination that we can pull from this topic from both of our varied research and even similar things, like the fact that we've researched the same situations, but taken different things out of it shows how complex this all is. And neither is right or wrong. We're talking about the all of the all here. That's complex and it's intertwining. The fact that there's man and there's woman, yet there's a million archetypes in between that make up so many variables within our blood type, our astrology, our human design, everything that exists within the makeup that creates us. Every single moment that happened to us in our life is a variation in the matrix we call life. And that Christ energy is one of the only things we can hold on to that is more or less going to find union between each other, because we can all agree it's love. We can all agree it's a light, like a golden light. That's why I like to say the golden light. Whatever you think of the white light, the gold, I think we can all agree on, has a heart-centered space when all of our chakras are aligned and the color of our aura emanates gold. Like that's a space that we could all get into when we feel that Christ space. So it's a place of home where we can come and be together energetically and even physically in a place where there's no judgment, there's no dogma, because that's exactly what Christ was trying to set up, a place where you could just be. And it does have purity in its heart. It does have purity, but that purity is going to come without shame. That Christ energy is going to naturally lead you to a pure existence without shaming or blaming. It's just naturally going to do that to you. And it's hard to explain until you just simply start the process. But it comes with sovereign discernment and looking at everything in your life with that energy and going good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And not that everything is good, bad, but it helps us to start going that one step further each at a time. And when we hold Christ in our heart, we can assure ourselves that we are more likely to pick the more optimal decision. And from experience, after you've been doing this for a few years, you kind of always pick the right thing. Not always, like even this morning, I was catching on to thoughts that took me a second or two before I was like, wait a minute, those aren't mine. But once upon a time, coming from outside darker sources, and it was driving me nuts. And yet here we are now, and they're almost gone. They came in this morning, probably trying to stop this today, but because I know what I know and the light was within me, I can see it, and you counter, and that brings you to your truest self. So it's not about surrendering to an outside entity. It's about becoming more of you, of who you truly are, because in our core of the core, we are the Christ energy. I think that is that place of oneness that we all share, or at least something that's layered within it, something that deeply has to do with it. It's part of the fabric of our actual reality with that mother.
Absolutely.
That Holy Trinity there's also many Holy Trinities because we're in a third dimensional space. So you're going to find many threes. 333 is the number of Jesus. It's Stephen woke up then the night before last at 333, another sign, because 333 is so important to show us what we are. And that mother, father energy, the Holy Spirit is actually, when you metaphysically learn and understand this, and you can argue with it, but to me, it reigns true. And that is that Holy Spirit is the Christ consciousness energy, the energy that just kind of is a flowing embodiment everywhere, in every space, in every one. It's that thing that you feel come upon you that causes anointings and things of such natures. It's always everywhere, where that Son energy could be seen as Jesus and the Father as the all of the all. But then you also have the Father, the Son, the Mother, the Earth, and the Son being all of us. Like the middle one is all of us. So there's so many ways you can break down the Trinity, and not necessarily any one is wrong, because you can even call Lucifer, Satan, and Christ a Holy Trinity if you wanted to. Like there's so many threes in our matrix that we live within.
Absolutely. No, no, no. And I agree with everything that you're saying. And the one thing I want to bring up real quick, I think you're going to really enjoy this too, Diana, is I want to talk about how metaphysics and Christianity are intertwined. And I have a couple of visual examples that we can take a look at real fast. So let's take a look at, I'm sure a lot of you guys know the Jesus fish. Okay, you guys have seen the Jesus fish a lot. It's actually one of the most common symbols we see for modern Christianity. But one of the things I want to bring up about where this Jesus fish actually came from is it actually came from a symbol called the Vesica Pisces. Now, as you can see here in this example, we have the Vesica Pisces as it normally is, which are two intersecting circles. Of course, we've seen this symbol before in a lot of different places. This is actually a sacred geometry symbol, and it has many applications in our current today world. Sometimes we see it as a Venn diagram. You can see it as the MasterCard symbol too, the ABC symbol for ABC News also, which is very interesting as well. But it's how it's presented is what really matters. When we're talking about these kinds of symbols, these sacred geometry symbols and these occult symbols, it always matters how it's presented. So you can even see here to the right of the original image where we get the actual Jesus fish from. So this pattern actually represents the first 2 days of creation and the synergy that occurred during these first 2 days of creation. We were going to get into that aspect of this a little bit deeper after I show this photo, but we can see as plain as day that this is where the Jesus fish emerged from, was from this sacred pattern. So this is one of the biggest things that a lot of modern Christians are going to try to tell you is satanic. They're going to tell you that this is devil worship, me even bringing this up. But this is the actual roots. This is the actual origin of where this symbol came from. And, you know, we see these principles in metaphysics when we talk about sacred geometry. And
Well,
I mean, we can see.
this is the Holy Trinity. If I don't know if you, this
Yeah.
is the Holy Trinity. It's the two becoming one,
Yeah.
because our world is one split into two, but us finding the union between to live within. Like that's what this symbol. I mean, it means lots of things, but that's when I think of it as a Christian symbol. That's why it's so powerful. It's the union.
You're gonna love this next, guy. So check this out, Diana. So this is, I'm gonna actually bring up the Trinity symbol. So there's a Trinity symbol in this format. So yeah, let's take a look at this. So we have the actual Genesis pattern, right? So we can see the Vesica Pisces at the first one right here, but look, here we have the actual Trinity starting to emerge. So yes, this is a very important pattern. So this actually goes through the days of creation. This is what's known as the Genesis pattern. A lot of people, you know, would know this as the flower of life, but this is actually just more than the flower of life. This is a subsection of that pattern that shows these first 7 days of creation of this realm and this experience that we're having. And yes, we can see the Trinity. You know, we can see the original pattern. We can see all of these different emerging circles, these spheres that are intersecting with each other, creating this seventh day here, which is the creation. So this is another example just of what we're talking about here as far as how metaphysics actually works with Christianity and how Christianity itself originally stemmed from metaphysics. So these are two good examples, but nonetheless, yes, you know, the Trinity is a very important thing. And it really showcases how a lot of important things come in threes, just exactly as Diana was saying. I did wake up at 3:33 on Saturday night after a very interesting dream. But, you know, nonetheless, I wanted to bring up those examples just so people can get an idea of that this is a real thing. You know, this is not just some metaphysical speculation we're talking about. We see that Christianity has very deep roots in metaphysics, and this is where true Christ starts to begin to emerge. Now, one of the biggest things that I think a lot of, you know, other modern Christians do is they look at Christ as an external savior. right? But we know that this energy exists within us. Let's talk about Arianism for just a second. For those of you who don't know what Arianism is, it was a old Christian ideology that actually existed before the Council of Nicaea. And in Arianism, it was believed that Christ had existed since the beginning. Okay, and what the beginning is, we're gonna leave that up to you guys on what you think this beginning is, because there's a lot of people who think that the universe could potentially be infinite. There could be a cycle of this creation. So we're just going to use the beginning in terms for an ergonomic way to describe. But Christ has always existed. Christ was not a creation. So this is what Arianism brought to the table when it was around pre-Council of Nicaea. But then when the Council of Nicaea came, it squashed a lot of those old Christian beliefs that actually had some really good things that we can take from them, and kind of turned Christianity around to what it is today. But let's go off of what I just said, that Christ has always existed. Christ was not created. It has been a part of creation, and it always has. So this is what I mean by Christ is essentially an energy. It is not just a particular person. Of course, we have seen many. That looks like my mic had got unplugged. But anyways, as I was saying, it is Christ is a energy. And there have been many different embodiments of Christ. We see the story of Osiris. We see the story of Ahura Mazda. We see the story of Mithra. All of these Christ-like figures that have come throughout the ages to help wake us up, to shake up humanity, and to show them that there is more to what we're doing. There's more to our experience here than meets the eye. So that's just something I wanted to bring up real fast. I'll bounce back off to you, Diana, that, we're looking at this, and a lot of modern Christians might say what we're saying is heresy. But when we look, at Christianity in its truest form and the message that it conveys, we're not being heretics at all. We're just trying to bring back to light what once was and what got diluted. Yes, David, thanks for being here, man. I'm glad you could make it. But Diana, let's bounce that off to you for a second, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. And there's multiple ways that this has been presented. So in the Gnostics, there's a few versions, but in one of the ones, Christ is like the third aeon made, second or third. I think third, because they came in man-woman pairs. And so that makes him the second and the third in that way. And he's created. And then they don't even talk about him that much in like a lot of the stories as an aeon, but he was one of them in that version. But then there's also something to be said about Christ being the first energy of God's thinking and moving, because God is love. That's why Christ is the purest of pure energy, because it's tapping into that version of God, because everything is God. We are all God. So technically Satan is God. Lucifer is God. Everything is God. So we want to aim ourselves, especially as creator beings, to the highest of the high for the most optimal life. And Christ comes with a happiness, a joy, and a bliss, because it's within that space of God that is love. That was the first thing moving around and thinking and being and just bliss and love before it even started to create all of us and all of this. And then made in the image, that spark, the God spark, the heart spark, whatever you want to call it, it links right into something that feels just like the Christ energy. They're one and the same. It's that peace inside of us that comes alive in the name of Jesus. It is that space that we awaken. And it is one of the first things created as part of our reality, because you're right. The story is on like the universe and the fact that it's like recursive and always getting greater. And does it ever start over? It just keep getting better forever. Like, who can really say? And the Kabbalion says, don't think about the all of the all. You'll go crazy. It's not for you. Your human mind can't handle it. So we can only really make guesses at what like the highest of the high is. But we can also use our sovereign discerning mind to go, well, I've learned this, that, and the other, and I've lived my life this way, that way, this way. And when I touch upon this energy, it is not imaginary in any way. In fact, it's one of the most real feelings you can ever feel. It's a space that would be amazing to always live within. It's why all these things were created and the parables Jesus said to help us find that space, because he was aware we were covered in brainwashing and manipulation even back then. So the fact that we have to work our way into that energy is no accident. It is no accident at all. So this is where we are today, and we want to help you unpack it in a tangible way. And that will be a metaphysical way, and it will be a positive and pure way. And anybody that wants to sit there with dogmas and say it's evil to talk outside the Bible has probably never, ever read the Bible. Anybody with half a brain who's read the entire Bible can see that it's not complete BS, but there is large amounts of that. Do you beat your wife with a stick no bigger than this? Do you stone the town hoe? Like, no, you do not. Do you eat red meat? Do you eat shellfish? Probably. So the fact that they want to cherry pick what's heretical and what's not is honestly idiocy. And I'm tired of bowing down to these dogmatic.
What?
Go ahead.
No. What I was going to say is you're bringing up a very valid point here. You're dealing with people who have not truly read the Bible and look at the church as a source of authority. That's exactly what we're dealing with, and you're absolutely right. No, keep going. I wanted to just add that in there. Yeah, keep going with what you were saying, because it's something we talked about on the show last week. And we're going to catch flack for what we're doing right now, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Because, we're staying true to what we think Christ truly is. And but like you're saying, here's an example I'm going to bring up for everybody, right? And we talked about this on our show last week, but I'm actually going to bring the definition up here so everybody can take a look at it. We talk about how Christians demonize the word ritual, and they demonize things like astrology. Well, let's bring up the definition of ritual really quick. We can look at it from a pretty third-party point of view here. So let's look at the definition of ritual: a religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. And it even says here the role of ritual in religion, right? And we have relating to or done as a religious or solemn rite, ritual burial. So we see, of course, like you were just saying, Diana, we're not bowing down to these modern Christians, at least nowadays, who a lot of them are bandwagon Christians. Let's just, kind of like look at the broad scope of this. And it's a shame that it's become that way. A lot of these individuals, they are only Christian because all of their friends are Christian or their family's Christian. They might not even go to church on Sundays all the time. They might just go to church like once every now and then, and they end up looking at the church like the church is a source of authority. And this is what happens when you get the dilution or the dilution of Christ's word and Christ's teachings as we do today. And so this is just a common case of point. We're talking about just the term ritual, guys. Like, we see so many modern Christians. So when you go to church every Sunday, that's a ritual. When you get your communion, that's a ritual. Okay, you go to Ash Wednesday, that's a ritual. You go to Palm Sunday, that's a ritual. Even Easter itself would be a ritual. So we see this demonization that comes from today's modern Christians on things like ritual and astrology, but little do they know that their very own religion, if they would just open up the book itself and actually read it, doesn't matter what version in this case, even in the King James version, there's tons of rituals. I mean that they even showcase rituals in the book themselves that were done, and this is just where we see a disconnect from true Christ in today's world. Ritual is not an evil thing. Like ritual is a good thing. It depends on the intention. We know this. So this is just one thing I wanted to bring
That's
up.
the whole point, just to make people know aware. Like that's the whole point of ritual. The all is mind. And the highers of the high know this, but they didn't want you to know it. That's why they made the rituals. Don't make your own. That's witchcraft. But our rituals, that's the real and the good ones, because they were maybe not harnessing your energy, although at a lot of points they were. But at the same time, they just wanted to keep you small, keep you in a box. That's what you're going to find out. The past of Christianity and a lot of religions were all about, because a ritual can be done about anything. I can make a ritual before I start the show to ensure that maybe it doesn't freeze up as much, and it would start to work, because I manifested the internet here. Starlink came here for only like a month, and I ended up getting it, and they can't take it away because it works on a satellite system. If it wasn't for that, this whole thing would be in and out because of living in the country. So you can manifest whatever you want with a ritual, and they know that, because the all is mind. And the whole point of the ritual is simply to get your own mind to believe it. And the more hemmings and hawings and this is and that's that you do, the kneel in Catholic Church, the kneeling, the up and the down, it's all to get that energy to build, to get your beliefs higher, for you to believe it so it manifests. But they were using that in the church for you to manifest what they wanted.
Absolutely. And the one thing you were saying, like, the all is mind, right? We know that the power of action, these rituals, is very, very much immense. If we're talking about the all is mind and consciousness being the prime fundamental of our reality, our focus is what gives things energy. So the more we focus on these actions, these intentions, these rituals, and both you and I independently have spoken about the power of belief on how it can shape, mold, and craft our realities. And from that power steps into from belief to knowing. And this is something that we experience as we begin to raise our frequency through our spiritual evolution and embodying these teachings. And our belief in these teachings ultimately will evolve into this knowing that connects us to the true tools that will manifest our experience. So this is why I like what you said, Diana, with the all is mind. And when it comes into ritual, these actions are what cultivate that energy flow. And these actions are what cultivate this, what I would call this collection of this energy that will kind of bring forth of these manifestations to help you get on your not only your most joyful, abundant life, but for you to deepen that connection with the divine nature in yourself. So absolutely, so this is something that we have to understand as we go forward in this topic, that a lot of these religions were meant to kind of keep us in boxes. They were kind of doctored from their original forms as a control mechanism to keep us kind of shoved down. But when we look at the real message of God and we look at the real message of the divine, this is a empowering message. This is an open message. This is what helps give us the power for our spiritual sustenance. This gives us the power to create our most joyful, abundant lives. And this gives us the power to connect with the divine on a personal level. This is ultimately what Jesus was trying to tell us. This embodiment of Christ was trying to tell us. It's one of the biggest reasons I think he faced the persecution that he did. He did from the Jews and the Romans, that he was literally toppling the control structure, and then to another hint where they were trying to make what Jesus is and what he was like as something attainable. Jesus was not a rule follower, everybody. Jesus was an awakener. Jesus was walking into synagogues and flipping tables. Jesus was hanging out with people you would call the undesirables or the degenerates of society, because he saw the divine
The rebels,
within
the
them.
anarchists. Yes.
The anarchists, exactly. So we have to understand that, you know, Christ is yes, in some ways it is an internal savior energy. Of course it is, because, you know, Christ exists within us as that middle pillar, that unison between the sun and the moon, that unison between masculine and feminine energies, the hemispheres of the brain, and all that. But Christ is also an awakener and a revolutionary energy. Christ is here to shake up and is to stir up the comfort zones of all of us here in this human collective, to make us realize that our souls have been offended here on this plane. You know, our divinity, our divine nature has been offended here. You know, we talked about this on the last show, but I like bringing this up. You know, I posted that meme that said, like, your awakening came from your soul being offended. You know what I mean? And this reality for a lot of us here has offended our souls.
This is why you get this is why you get sick and feel like you're dying when you don't listen to the soul. This is why, because you are dying to the self. Come alive in the name of Jesus, because when you don't honor the soul, what it's calling for, and it's always calling for Christ consciousness at its root. It'll have different things, but when you find the root, if you don't follow that, you die. You die. It, like, slowly but surely. And that's how we see people. This is why when you get older, people think age is what kills you. No, it's because you start as a child that's filled with the spirit, but year after year after year, usually starting late teenage years, but sometimes earlier, sometimes later, but year by year by year, you betray yourself. You betray yourself. You need that job. You need that money. You need that house. You need that girl. It doesn't matter what it is. You betray, you betray, you betray, you betray. Next thing you know, you're 50 years old. You're a complete atheist. You might not even realize it. And life sucks. So you don't know why you exist. And you have a midlife crisis or worse.
Well, exactly. You know, and of course, I agree with you on that. It's that disconnect. It's that disconnect from our divine nature. What causes us to fall prey to these what I would call, I wouldn't even call them laws, but I would call perspectives of the matrix reality. You know what I mean? Because we can see we can override being sick. We see we can override aging now. We see that we have the ability to override a lot of these things. And all of that comes from just reestablishing that connection with our soul and that divine nature within us. And you kind of summed it up nicely, you know, like we come into this world, right, and we're constantly conditioned to look with outside of us. You know, from the very day that we're born, we're conditioned to look on the outside of us for validation, you know, for love, for truth, for all of these big questions in life. We always look towards the outside of ourselves, you know, which is the biggest disservice that we can truly have, because every single answer, that validation exists within you. That love exists within you. You know what I mean? All of these answers to the biggest questions in life exist within you. And this is what we deal with in this world today. You know, you could very well be 50 years old and be an atheist and have this midlife crisis, but you can kind of avoid all of that by just understanding that there is a spiritual nature here to this reality. And ultimately, this is what the original teachings of Christ was trying to show us, that we have this ability to establish this connection on our own. And through establishing this connection, we are walking into a doorway of not only extremely well physical health, extremely well mental health, you know, we're walking into a doorway of extremely well spiritual health as well. And ultimately, this is what's going to help us have that joyful, abundant existence, is this alignment between this mental, physical, and spiritual health that we can find through these teachings, that we can find through our own spiritual evolution. And this is the biggest quote unquote secret. You know, we see a lot of people nowadays, you know, they're looking to live forever. You know, they're always looking outside of themselves for these answers, but you could merely just establish this connection within you to your true nature, and it's going to pave the way for all of that to occur for you.
Yeah, and that leads into like dying to the self, which Jesus mentions, dying to the self, and the ego death we hear in the Buddhist language, dying to the self, getting to the point where like you might even be excited to die. You so know what's on the other side of things.
Exactly. So, and that's essentially what they mean by dying before dying, or death before dying, is understanding that true nature about yourself. And I mean, there's many ways we can access that state of death before dying. It can be done through meditation. It can be done through breath work. It can be done through entheogenic experiences. There's many different ways to understand that. It can even be done through just gaining and cultivating an understanding of your divine nature. So this is an important step in the spiritual evolution. I know a lot of us are working towards that. But yes, nonetheless, I kind of want to dive into our main topic for today, if Diane is okay with that. I kind of want to go over what it means to have a championship mentality for healing.
Yes. Can I just, because now that I can finish my point, someone's
Yeah. Go right ahead.
The tablets die. So the resurgence of Christianity has happened before, and it's going to happen again, and they're not going to stop at this time thanks to our educational level and the internet. But it's happened before, just so everyone knows. Like when the King James Bible came about, there were people circulating. There was two different versions, but one of them was bigger than the other, and I forget the title. But you remember how they were teaching everyone the Bible through Latin. They were teaching it to you through Latin, so you couldn't read that yourself. Most people couldn't read it all, let alone also read Latin. To be able to read that, you would have had to go to divinity school and learn it when they're also able to brainwash you to get you on board. So those Bibles were circulating. People were learning themselves, and in it, they could see the anarchy, the God within. They could read that in the actual Bible. So the King James Version came along and wiped that out of the system, because they took that and said, honor your king and things like that were not in the original translation. It was all about honoring the self through God. And then you had Martin Luther King, who was another version, who came and was like reading the Bible and reading these books and going like, hey, this isn't actually like, the biggest thing that got him was they used to, I forget what they're called too. They used to sell basically like these little pieces of paper. That was your ticket to heaven. You could buy them for yourself. You could buy them for others. If you sinned, you could buy another. Instead of like the Hail Marys of today, you would actually pay to get these slips to get you to heaven. And on top of that, with reading the actual Bible himself, Martin Luther was like, this is not right. And that's how the Protestant church was born. Again, they found a way to box that back in to get you right back in the system. But these people, these resurgences of being like, wait, that's not what Jesus was saying. That's not what God's about, have happened over and over and over again. Or how about all the millions of people that were killed as heretics? Like, this has happened before, but no longer can they stop us thanks to intellect and the internet and not being allowed to murder us for our thoughts, at least in North America. But continue with the main topic.
No. Let me kind of let me touch on that a little bit too, because I have something I want to say about that as well. No, we are seeing these resurgences. We've seen these reevaluations of the Word of God in the Bible and Christianity itself. I mean, that's how we even essentially got the Geneva text of the Bible. We actually came from that Protestant Revolution, and you know, that text is a very interesting text. If you have not taken a look at the Geneva text, I highly suggest that you do, because in the beginning of this book, it talks about how we need to be very discerning and aware of the evils and the darkness of this world that include the world governments and establishments. So this was something that was actually originally in the Geneva text Bible that King James ended up removing. You know, King James did a lot of editing to the Bible. And one of the biggest things, you know, I want to talk about as well is just having discernment with some of the later versions of the Bible as well. This good stuff is still in there. However, it's highly diluted. It's not the way that it once was. And this is why I kind of recommend a lot of modern Christians, those who are serious, they branch out and they expand, and they look at the different non-canonical texts. They look at some of the Apocrypha. They look at some of the Gnostic scriptures. They look at the books of Acts that were not included in the original books of Acts in the Bible, like the Acts of Andrew and the Acts of Barnabas and things like that, to get like kind of a fuller picture for themselves. You know, one of the biggest things I can say is I feel these books can be important. in my eyes, because they have the message that is being relayed is a little bit more upfront. It's going to be better to digest if you're not used to reading books with spiritual speak in them, and that's kind of the way that I put it as well. But no, I'll digress and say we see this resurgence of Christianity happening throughout these periods. And this time, I think we are going to see the resurgence of true Christ. They cannot stop it. This has been building for a while, just as you said, and we have a lot of this information at our fingertips today that is an advantage for us in trying to bring this message out there. We talked about in our show last week, how back in the day when you would want to know something, you would have to take a boat voyage, a ship voyage, and that ship voyage could be like 2 months, and then you finally get to this destination, and then you have like a 2-week long trek to this temple that's located somewhere in the wilderness that has this one specific book that you might be able to read. And this is why they would talk, back in the old days, the spiritual awakening would take lifetimes, because you would literally need a lifetime just to get a hold of one book, and then you would pass on, reincarnate, and then you would need another lifetime to get a hold of this other book. But now we live in this age where we have all of these books and they're accessible to us at our fingertips. So yes, they cannot stop it. It's a beautiful thing that what we're doing today, and I am completely happy to be doing this today as well, and to try and showcase what true Christ means to me. But yeah, let's jump into the main topic of our sermon today. We have a championship mentality when it comes to our healing. And what this means to me, and then we'll bounce off to Diana to see what it also means to her. What this means to me is kind of in a lot of ways, not sugarcoating your healing with yourself. This means to me that it means developing a real aspect of self-honesty with ourselves when it comes to our healing. To me, it also represents kind of pushing ourselves a little bit in a healthy way, mind you, to get to the next level of our healing and where we need to be, and shedding these traumas and these past instances that no longer serve us. I feel when it comes to healing ourselves and reestablishing our divine connection, a lot of people tend to baby step it. And I can understand that completely, because, we have a lot of things we're overcoming here. We have a lot of programming that we're rewriting in us, both conscious and subconscious. But in a lot of ways, what taking a championship mentality with our healing means to me is it means pulling up our big boy pants and our big girl pants and diving in. You might open up that closet full of skeletons within you, and you might open that door, and you might look up, and you might realize that this closet full of skeletons is piled up like 100 feet high. And this closet might span dimensions. It might be a weird closet, and that can be extremely intimidating to us, especially when we first embark on our spiritual evolution. Right. That brings on a form of personal accountability. And, we have to be accountable for ourselves. We have to be accountable for our actions towards others here on out. And we have to be accountable to our healing as well. So in a lot of ways, taking that championship mentality is not holding back. It's understanding that this is the premise of our spiritual evolution. This is the most important part of our spiritual evolution. And this is something that we need to dive in and we need to do the dirty work with. And and what I mean by this too, is it's almost like have some umph with it. Have some, of course, there's going to be days where you need grace and you need to give yourself grace. Don't get me wrong, but, take charge of your healing. Don't just leave it to your devices, or don't just leave it to come as it may. Kind of set forth and take initiative on your path towards that healing. That's what it means to me. Let's hear what it means to Diana.
Well, it starts first and foremost with taking sovereign discernment, and it's And it grows from there because we are so incredibly brainwashed. I don't want to repeat myself, but this is so important because we're so brainwashed to get it into our head. Like even myself, every now and then I'll realize there's another layer of brainwashing. There's another layer of something else. And this is why I think Carl Jung, if we were still naming saints, Carl Jung should be sainted. Not that I'm Catholic, but like Carl Jung was a prophet. Carl Jung was a sage because of what he brought us, that alchemical process, which is what I bring people myself, because when it comes to going to God, that was the ultimate way. Like it, rather than teach people about God and metaphysics, which I tried my hand at and it never like, it's not like I don't know it, I know it, but I don't want to teach you that, the ins and outs and quantum physics and all the ways it actually works. I'll mention it sometimes when I'm teaching, but ultimately, if you want to learn that, go learn it somewhere else, because what I found matters the most, top and most foremost, is alchemization of the self, rooting out the shadow, the cliche shadow work, but yes, rooting out that shadow, because 95% of our subconscious on average, well, it's subconscious. So 95% of our being is subconscious. And that's going to hold within it so much, not just darkness, but also hidden light. It's also going to hold your programs, your brainwashing from self, from society, from your DNA, ancestral trauma. There's so many things in that shadow subconscious part that need to be alchemized and brought online. And that begins first and foremost with sovereign discernment. And that means dissecting everything about yourself and walking through life with that awareness of, why did I say this? Why did I say that? And it might seem annoying at first, but eventually you do hit a point where you notice you're always authentic, always, for better or worse. You are always authentic, even if it's rude sometimes. You're authentic. You said what you truly think. If you find yourself ever panicked, like, why do I think this? Why is this happening? What's going on? That's where you stop and go, okay, what's happening? And you'll always find an internal root. They cannot send something from the outside in without it having a landing space from your subconscious. This is why they put so much work and effort into manipulating your subconscious. Because if you are fully enlightened or very enlightened and somebody's sending you some kind of fear signal or manipulation or straight up trying to get you to do something, if there's no landing space in your subconscious, that's going to fall flat and you're going to be like, what? Like, it's not going to phase you at all. And this is why you want to use triggers as a good thing. And the whole rooting out the ego is all part of it, but you don't need to focus on that because it automatically happens during shadow work, during this alchemical process. And you'll need to learn to allow your ego to be offended, because when you first start this, your ego is going to stand guard. Even though a part of you is going to want that divine life, your ego is going to be, yeah, but the whole time. And it doesn't need to worry. It's got its own thing. Honestly, focusing on it doesn't matter. Just learn to take the pain, that alchemical fire of its disintegration. It'll just change. It doesn't die. And just tell it, you're not going to die. Eventually it starts to get the hint, and that thing we talked about in our other episode about riding the bull gets easier because it starts to get the hint. But you do need to learn to go through that pain of letting that ego just, because you need to get to all those triggers. Like, we are a computer program and you're trying to clean up your algorithm.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I like how you put being sovereign and having discernment as the top priorities of this. No, that's 100% the case. We got Don coming in and saying hi real quick. Thanks, Don. Thanks for tuning in. But no, exactly. It's that's where I bring into the self-honesty into play, because self-honesty becomes such a key integral part of our healing process. I've said this before multiple times that, we can either be our biggest cheerleaders or we can be our biggest critics, and it's about finding that balance in between the two that even plays key into that sovereignty itself. Because as a sovereign human being, you can have that honesty with yourself, knowing that, hey, dude, you deserve to give yourself grace at this point in time. You're either going through a lot, or you have to be like, hey, we need to pick this up. You slipped up. You kind of failed this test. We're going to have the divine throw out these tests to us in our healing. It's going to test us with our triggers. It's going to test us with these situations, and these tests will begin to showcase themselves when we get to these certain parts of our healing. So absolutely, the sovereignty and the discernment comes into play, because number one, as a sovereign being, you you know ultimately what's right for you and your conditions and your mindset and your headspace at that time. And having discernment in that fact kind of leads into you knowing when you've done something good, you knowing when you need to kind of, fix and address a certain situation within yourself as well, as opposed to just being all stuck in the love and light or all stuck in the doom and gloom of this process. Because, we have found ourselves there, multiple times, it's happened to the best of us. We get stuck in that all love and light where we can negate the wrong things what we're doing, or, we get stuck in that doom and gloom where we think we're doing everything wrong. So absolutely good points, Diana. I think that really plays into it. I also think what it means is having a championship mentality with your healing is also kind of, pushing yourself a little bit and kind of exposing yourself to these triggers in some ways as well. That way you can kind of test yourself throughout the process. I mean, X is a great example for that, right? We're around tons of things each day that can potentially trigger us. We can see things that can potentially get that bull stirred up within us, but it's kind of a good testing ground in that fashion, in that way as well, that we can kind of expose ourselves to some of these things that trigger us and allow us to kind of find our ways to be able to sit with that emotion and to let it transmute that emotion for higher purposes. So exactly, good points, Diana.
Yeah, because that's exactly what the Christ energy is here to help us with. And this is why connecting with it's going to make it easier for you, because there's a lot of beings we can work with. And I would say like Christ is like the highest point, but we will still work with other beings because that Christ energy comes with little to no words. It's like an energetic frequency you can get within. But as you raise your frequency, you find there's more and more and more good beings that can actually give you fuller details. But you do want to listen to them with sovereign discernment. But you'll learn as you go through this that there's no need for, I mean, you always want to have it, but there's really no need for sovereign discernment with the Christ energy. That Christ energy will have absolutely never steered you wrong. And if it did, it was for your own good. You just didn't see it, or that wasn't Christ energy. And that's how you can start to learn how to feel exactly which energy that is. Because it's been years of just realizing that one, like I feel it as like a wafting gold mist that's kind of surrounding. It's like a tangible feeling and a sensation that like, it's the embodiment. You can, that Holy Spirit energy you can call down and upon. And so whenever you're going through these things, that's always there to call upon.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And honestly, you brought up an even point, a good point too, about something we experienced as well. You talked about how if it steered you wrong, it was for a lesson of some kind. And that's something too, we have to have this awareness of. Sometimes we will be brought to, let me start it off with this. So one of the biggest things I hear from a lot of people who dispute the existence of something divine is if something divine existed, if there was a God or there was Christ or there was something like this, why is all of this bad stuff happening in the world? Why is there all of this killing? Why is there all of these things that are occurring if there's truly a God or there's truly a divine entity, or there's Christ involved in this existence at all? Well, one of my biggest things that I say to a lot of people is how could you truly know peace if you never experienced conflict? How could you truly appreciate and know what you want if you don't experience what you absolutely don't want? There's a balance at play here. All right, human beings don't learn and they do not grow from just being in a state of bliss all of the time, or being in a state of love and light all of the time. So that's where we have to understand this reciprocating energy between Christ and Lucifer, and that balance as well, because we have to be tested. We have to have these trials and these tribulations in order to grow. So I'll digress and get back to my next point. They what I'm saying, Christ energy might direct you towards something as a learning experience. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to emphasize on what you were saying there, how, you said Christ energy isn't going to lead you astray. It might direct you towards something for a lesson. I just wanted
Well,
to
and
give a
I
little bit of
found
an
it
example of
can
that.
direct you towards things that are uncomfortable, because I spent years going, why? And it turned out that was for the best. So you kind of just have to go through it blind sometimes. I don't know if we touched on Don's point here. How do you identify false Christ light? It's the talking. Actual Christ does not talk at all. It'll kind of just be like an inclination, a steering that you kind of just feel. And it comes with like love and understanding, and it never argues with you. It doesn't have many words or really any at all. Your own mind might, but that's why your own mind could sometimes be a negative entity and you don't even realize it until you start to get this under control. But Christ has very, very, very little to no words.
I would completely agree with that. I think real Christ energy is a feeling. And that's the best way I can describe it. In my dream that I had on Saturday night, it was a hum. It was like a hum in my heart center. It was this subtle vibration that it is the echoes of the divine. It's the stillness and the echoes of the divine. So one thing you'll notice about real Christ energy it's a lack of words. It's a feeling. It's something that is it's subtle yet powerful, and it steers you towards things that are going to help your growth and things that are going to bring you towards your joyful, abundant existence here as well. So I completely agree with that, Diana. I think it's feeling. A lot of this is feeling. A lot of this it goes beyond words. So it's like a driving force indeed. That was a good one.
Yeah, and it's not even going to be the main player all the time, because there is so many beings working with us, and we are in such an advanced period of enlightening that you're going to have and probably want other beings to work with, and that you're going to learn to channel into, because that's what's coming online for all of us: psychic abilities, emotional healing abilities at a rapid speed, which I can only just tell you, you'll feel into it one day. But it starts with the Carl Jung aspect of shadow healing first, because you have to get that extreme darkness under control before we proceed further. And that means signing on for a positive light. Because the one thing that the Christ light will kind of, I don't want to say go away, but you will feel separated from it if you're living in sin. And this is where that big, widespread don't sin thing came from. It's not a judgmental space. There's just something magnetic that takes that frequency that's Christ and pushes it away when you're sinning, and you're doing that yourself. So a sin is personal. Like, I don't want to say somebody could murder someone and not be sinning, but honestly, how your makeup is, if that was pure to you, that could be pure to you. And it's whatever is of your own, not just you, the ego. I mean, you, the higher self, because we each have our own plan. We each have our own emanation down on this earth for whatever it is for us. And some people have to live purer than other. And then it depends on how far you want to go in this life. I want to go all the way. So that means all the way pure. And then it grows from there. And that Christ energy won't, if you are living in a state of purity, and that's going to be a frequency, not a decision, that's when the Christ energy is there for you. But then the really cool thing about Christ is it actually can come to you in a low moment. So it's like something that breaks through the matrix there. When you're darkest, just come to me, Jesus. Like, so many people have these breakthrough stories, and even myself, I do, where I was in complete darkness and the Christ energy broke through. It was there and it stayed with me and got me out of the situation. But then it's almost like it didn't completely go, but it faded back to the background until I brought myself manually back to that energy. So it can break through at parts to save us. But for the most part, you're going to need to be pure if you want to be embodying it all the time.
I would agree. And I think, we need to kind of really redefine what sin is for a lot of people too,
It's betraying the self. It's
betraying the self 100%. It's betraying the self, and it's to me, a lot of it is shutting ourselves off from that connection with the divine as well. And this is something, I wanted to clear up today for sure. Is, we look at at the way sin has started to be portrayed, in the modern Christian community. And really it's just betraying the self. It's going against our authenticity. It's going against what we know as truly being right by ourselves, by our loved ones, and by other human beings. And that even kind of falls into case the fear. I would say even having a lot of fear could potentially be a sin itself. And the reason why I say that is because that fear ultimately cuts us off from that Christ consciousness.
And it's not having
that
trust. There's no
it's exactly, it's not having that trust in the divine, and that the divine is there for you, and it's consistently looking out for you. One of the biggest things I've said on my show a lot, and and I know you agree with me on what I'm about to say, that is, if you are doing right by yourself, and you are doing right by your loved ones, and you are doing right by other human beings, you have absolutely nothing to fear. And, this is a huge pill for a lot of people to swallow, because they don't understand how much fear ties into our healing as well. Some people are afraid of what's on the other side. They've become so used to and so comfortable with the dysfunction that they're experiencing, whether it be from things that have happened to them in their lives, such as addictions, such as traumas and things like that. They have become so comfortable in the trauma and dysfunction that they could even be afraid of stepping over the other side into this new way of being, this new way of life. So absolutely, that's how fear even kind of ties into that as well. Is you're disconnecting yourself from your authenticity of the self. You're betraying yourself by not having that trust. So that's just something I wanted to add in there for sure.
No, I love that. And it's funny because that song Into the Unknown from the second Frozen, which is much better than the first, but it's like, it's almost a sacred song right there, like into the unknown, and the whole words behind it. Like, she's scared, there's trepidation, but she's excited, and she goes and blazes into the unknown. And I don't think it's an accident that they make her all angelically white in this version of the movie, because there's something sacred about stepping into the unknown. And you have to do that. And that's why fear, it's like a sin in itself, because it's not trusting the divine. It's not trusting your higher self. It's not trusting, because when you're listening to the highest of the high, and this could be Christ, this could even be your higher self, because they start to all attach, right? If you're not listening, if you have excuses, and especially if they're going to be lower end brainwashed excuses, fear programming being first and foremost of that. Like the other day, like I said, I'm done with horror movies forever. Horror movies were ridiculous, and it's so obvious they were satanic. Like, they were getting us more fear. And like, we already have it with the media. We already have it with the government. We already have it from just actually being a human and dying really easy for thousands of years. Like, it's already there. We did not need more of it. But here we go with horror movies, and it's just fear, fear, fear. They want us to fear everything. Kids aren't allowed outside alone anymore. Meanwhile, when something actually happens to them, it's usually by somebody they know. So keeping them at home is almost like it's keeping them in more danger. But like, I don't know where, like, these things, like, they come and people just keep stepping into these fear spaces. But no, stop watching horror movies, because that's something you have control over. Stop watching the news. Stop taking part in things. Even family members, when you start, if you notice, I don't know about yours, but my family will like be right in there. Like, the gossip isn't even about other people. It's about the fear porn of what's going on in the world. And it's no, because that's where you betray yourself. If you let that into your system, you simply, and this is why you want to make peace with death and die to the self, because you have to be okay with dying. We do die really easily. We don't die that much anymore, especially in North America. But technically the human is a fragile creature. So just accept that. I might be squashed today, and that's okay, because I trust the divine, and I trust my higher self. That's putting a faith in yourself that you actually need to ascend, to enlighten. You need to have faith in yourself. Otherwise, like, because you remember, mostly subconscious. So if you are consciously not showing faith in yourself, what do you think that's going to mean to the 95 subconscious part? It's not going to trust either. And it's been programmed to be scared. So that's not going to work out. You need to consciously warrior, spiritual warrior. You need to be that to bring the light forward, because it is going to be going through so much fear programming of what's happening today and what's been brainwashed into us for thousands and thousands of years. The fall of man was just us forgetting that whatever happened, if you want to call it the flood of Atlantis, the flood of Noah, both being the same, or simply just magical sparkle dust that came down and poof, we forgot who we were. It doesn't matter how it happened, but I think it's quite obvious that it did. Made in thine image. We are that God being ourself in a microcosm, meaning we are just as capable of manifesting to a degree other beings probably are not capable of, from everything we've ever seen evidence-wise. So that means that we have a sacred duty to treat our minds like they are God, because they are. You are generating reality. So anytime you get into a fear space, you are helping that fear come manifest onto this earth. And that is a huge betrayal to yourself and your higher self. Your higher self sees all. So anytime you are kidding yourself, maybe especially sheeples, they're really good at kidding themselves on what's what. And I was one of them, with lies to yourself of what's what and poor me stories. And there's so much baggage that can happen in that space of lying to the self. But guess what? The higher self always sees the truth. And this is where depression and anxiety come from, because it's sitting there knowing better and trying to talk to you, but you're not listening. You have to start taking the steps little bit. And eventually you can hear the higher self loud and clear. And your higher self is probably the best voice to listen to actually get instructions of what to do, to bring you that step forward. And that's automatically going to end up Christ light, Christ enlightenment, as that higher self space is embodied and live within the higher self. Like, it's all connected once you get up there. And if you understand sacred geometry and the way matrix works, it does actually completely make sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you brought up a key case in point too. Our mental faculties do interact with our existence. This is something Christ spoke about on many different occasions. And that is ultimately it. We have to understand that when we're in this fear-based state, right, and we are in this state of fear, whether it's sadness, depression, when we are detaching ourselves from that divine aspect of ourselves, what happens is we lose control of those tools. It's almost like we are forfeiting, in a lot of ways, the control that we have over our world and our existence through fear. And, when we talk about how the all is mind and, our mental faculties interact with this existence, that kind of showcases case in point there of what fear can do to us. Fear can derail us, from achieving what our growth and what we're looking for. It makes us surrender these tools the divine and Christ have given us to create and manifest this existence for our highest possible purpose. So it's almost like, in some ways, it's putting up a wall from yourself and your true nature. You're sacrificing these tools that have been handed to you to overcome all of your traumas, to overcome all of the obstacles that you face, and to actually truly embody Christ consciousness itself. So it is. I mean, that's a big part of our healing journey. It's having trust in that unknown. It's having that. A lot of people don't like the term faith. But in some ways it is. It's having trust and faith in the unknown.
It's phase locking. If you prefer quantum physics language, faith is phase locking.
Exactly.
So yeah.
No, exactly. So no, that's a very good point. I mean, and the other thing we have to understand too, when it comes to being sovereign in our healing, you just kind of said it, Diana, the content that we intake is a very, very big thing, especially if we're watching a lot of horror movies, we're watching a lot of negative things such as mainstream media, or, maybe listening to today's current music. A lot of that kind of comes into play that and it can affect us in ways that we don't realize. So one of the biggest things you can do to have a championship mentality with your healing is to look at the content that you intake. Are you intaking good things? Are you intaking things that are going to contribute to your healing? Are you intaking things that are going to contribute to your growth? I mean, that's the number one thing is all. I mean, that boils down to, food even. Are you taking care of your health? That as well, because one thing I'm huge on, when you increase your physical health, you increase your spiritual health by default. You bring your physical vessel into a good state of being. Your mind and your spirit are going to be able to expand beyond their horizons as well. So that's also, another thing we have to take into account. You brought that up with the horror movies. I think that's great. I also feel like they try to manipulate us through a lot of that as well, and put us in that fear state. What was it? We were talking the other day about, how the extraterrestrial fear programming and things that we see. We look at every single movie about other life out there. It's all in a negative context, aside from, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That seems to be the only one that delivers that message in a positive context. But yes, being aware of what we intake as far as content and what we bring into our mind sphere, our head space as well, is a really big point that you hit pretty well there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched there again on the Holy Trinity. That is another and probably the most important Holy Trinity for us to actually worry about: mind, body, spirit. Your mind, body, spirit is the one thing you have control over, because it's exactly it. And
You froze up again, but no, exactly. That's an amazing Trinity right there, the mind, body, and spirit. And that is something that we ultimately do have control over ourselves. Go ahead. You freed up again.
Okay, so the mind, body, spirit is what we have control over as our Holy Trinity to keep it going. So in my earlier days, and it still exists, I'm just used to it. So it's like the wheels are greased, but I would be learning and hit a block. So that was my mind, but then my mind would max out and I would need to go back, and my body would need better. I would need to eat better, work out more, whatever that is. And then you'd still hit a block. Oh, the soul, I need to be with my spirit more. That could mean meditating. And when I say prayer, you need to be careful with your prayer, because we're taking worship off the table. I even want to rename how we play the music in the beginning, which is another example of content. You want good content. And I love rock music, rock metal music. So I made my own, thanks to the way technology is nowadays. No credit to me. It's all the divine. I wrote it, and then you give the prompts, and here it is. And it's amazing. So we have the tools to create our own content, to be in alignment with where we want our life to go. And then that's soul. Music is soul. Eating better is body, and mind is learning. So we keep these, and then we keep moving forward. Because if you just try to, a lot of people are very mind in nowadays world. It's very mind, and then you'll get stuck. Or even some people are very body, and they spend all day at the gym and it gets stuck. Or some people spend all day on their knees praying and they get stuck. For one thing, you don't want to be praying as, please, God, please. You want to pray from the space of I am, where it's more a mantra, an affirmation, a connecting to God, a gratitude routine of just, I am so grateful. I am so grateful. There's many ways to pray from power, because when you pray from power, you are empowering your mind, body, spirit, keeping that Holy Trinity of the self always progressing forward through this world. And then absolutely with the content you consume, again, with that 95% subconscious mind, you are subconsciously programming it with absolutely everything you intake. In case you don't know this, or just to remind you, your subconscious mind hears absolutely everything as it directly said to you. So if you're even going, oh, that guy sucks, blah, 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 even just me doing this to you now, my subconscious just heard that as me saying that to me. So you want to cancel and nullify that. I cancel and nullify. I'll even do it. You've heard me do it on the show before. I do it all the time in my life. If I ever accidentally say something or think something, or sometimes you actually have to say it just to tell someone something. There's no other way to say it. And I'll say it and be like, but cancel and nullify. because you want to cancel it literally, because your words are vibrations. They actually have a life of their own once you speak them. And if you say it soon enough, although no matter when, it'll have a point, but the sooner you say it, the better, to cancel and nullify that energy. And you can literally feel the energy of what you created dissipate, and it's like knocks it out, because the words you speak matter so deeply in the world you're trying to manifest. You mentioned bringing that up today. First came the word, because the word is
Yes.
vibration. That's what manifests physical reality. So the words you speak, and even the thoughts in your heads, talking in your head, is still going to have this effect, because that's words and it's coming out. But usually saying, it depends on you as a person and what you actually resonate with is more powerful. But usually saying the words out loud, because they're being spoken and many things can hear you, and it doesn't have to be another human. There's so many things in our reality right now that are alive. Like, we are in the ocean. Air is just very, very thin water when you actually start to learn about how the structure of the universe is created. And that carries on the waters. You hear that in the Bible, carried on the water. That's something you want to always cultivate and maintain, along with your holy trinity of self, that the words you speak and think are meticulously curated.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. Let's segue into that. But yeah, so what is the word, and what the word is God? What does that mean? And what's a good way to break that down? You definitely started that off. So exactly what we speak into our existence. You guys have heard me say before a lot of times that there's spells being casted on us in this reality, and we're casting them upon ourselves. And there might be individuals such as the parasite class that are taking advantage of that, but it's ultimately up to us, and it's ultimately in our power to change the game. So that's what I really do think. What we speak is divine. We've brought up cymatics on both of our shows before, but everything has a frequency, everything has a pitch, and these frequencies are actually a visible form of sacred geometry themselves. These words we speak are this physical form of geometry that interacts with the divine, and what our intentions that we're conveying to the divine. So this is why what I think, in the beginning there was the word, and the word was God. Yes, we know that God is a vibration. A word is a vibration. The words that we speak are vibrations. Okay. And that's something, and we are ultimately this subjective divine focal point that is having this subjective experience right now. We have that in our driver's seat, that what we speak ultimately does manifest into existence. So that is something we have to have awareness of. That's something we have to have discernment with how we speak, because that is another tool in our tool chest that we have when it comes to establishing our connection to our divine nature and manifesting a joyful, abundant life, is the words that we speak, what we put into existence. You just said it firsthand. I cancel and I nullify this energy. Even when I had Jamie on my show last Wednesday, she was talking about how she would write it down, and how just even the transference from that into the mind to this piece of paper, setting this in stone in this particular way, is a word in and of itself. This is our power that we have. So absolutely, we have to understand that the words that we speak are a vibration. We look at, in the beginning there was the word, and the word was God. In the beginning there was this vibration, and the vibration is God. And this vibration that we emit from ourselves, that I'm emitting right now, is of God. And yes, I just saw that Don just popped up a question there. The parasite class and entities love the loophole of implied consent. Do you think we can use implied intention as a countermeasure, knowing what we mean before we say it? Oh, absolutely, Don. I do think 100% that we can do implied intention as a countermeasure. And I think that this would be one of our greatest tools in our tool chest at this point in time, because we can have implied attention when it comes to our interactions with other people, what we're trying to create for ourselves. So absolutely, man, I would agree. What do you think, Diana?
100%. And especially when you're like early on and you're almost like reinventing the self, it can feel like that. You're not really, you're just digging out your truest self. But there'll be points early on where it's like awkward and sticky. you can intentionally speak as the person you want to be. And this is probably straight out of Tony Robbins' teachings, or I've never actually heard his teachings, but we've all heard about him because he's such a big deal. And that is getting your words in alignment with exactly who you want to be in this earth. So state what you want and what you demand of the universe, because it is all right to demand what you want energetically to someone's face. You can do it with love and light, but you want to be firm in the self. And that's absolutely a countermeasure to all of the things they send at us. But I want to add one more part, and that is I cancel and nullify any of you have no permission here. You have no permission given. I rebuke you. You have no permission given, because free will universe, you have to give anything permission. And that includes the government, parasites, entities. Everything needs your permission for them
Absolutely.
to get easy access of you. So if you say you have no permission, I rebuke you, which is more or less the same, but why not say it two different ways to make it very clear? You do not have permission here. And that goes for everything, because this is what they do, trick us into consent in many, many, many different ways. It's why, so you want to speak intentionally. And this is because this can happen when we get talking to people, and like you're talking to Cindy and she's talking about the government or the news, and you don't want to look like a weirdo. So you kind of just go along. I was guilty of that for years. But the truth is, it's like you're sinning against yourself every time you speak outside your truth, even if you're just trying to keep the peace. And then you're giving permission to these government entities, these parasitic classes, all these different, because we're not just a food source for one thing. We are a food source from so many layers. Like what people think of as the reptilians and stuff are just middle management. It goes much higher than that. The reptilians are just taking advantage of a system that's already in place. They're just like hyenas in the wild, how they'll often just take advantage of what's already happening, what the lion already killed. And you want to not give permission to any single thing. And that works for anything. And that's the beauty of it. From the lowest of entities to the highest of dominant dark forces, you are the most powerful thing in the world to you, because you are God and you have more creative power than any being we've ever heard about. So cultivating your language, your words, your thoughts, your permissions is vital. So agreed.
100%. One thing I definitely want to bring up there is thoughts, and one of the biggest things, and we've seen this go around, is a lot of people think that meditation and connecting to our true divine nature is absolving ourselves of all thoughts. At first, what you want to do is not let your thoughts rule you. That would be the number one thing I want to add in there as well, because having non-attachment to our thoughts is going to be key in this process. Like you were saying earlier in the show, Diana, we're going to get weird thoughts. We're going to have these strange thoughts where we feel that they're not from us. So this is kind of a key practice in that as well, is understanding that you are not your thoughts, understanding that you have to have non-attachment with your thoughts, and also understanding that you cannot let your thoughts affect you. You have control over yourself as a sovereign person. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, and I want to jump on that. Sorry, and then you can. I just want to say,
No,
your dreams count as your thoughts, and your dreams are you giving you permission. This is where you are, and it's sometimes when you're in the lower, it's like, oh, that's not fair, but it is, because the information is out there. You are always warned. Learning how to be lucid in your dreams is actually part of being a spiritual warrior. And I've gotten myself to a place, I used to lucid dream all the time on purpose. I learned how to do it, did it every night. It was good for a while, but honestly, I would wake up exhausted, so I kind of turned it off. But then I was like, oh no, I lost it, except when it matters. So if I'm about to sin in a dream, or somebody's about to attack me, either or, I turn myself lucid again. It's like I have like a fail safe button. I turn myself lucid again and switch that around. And I learned that creates immense power. Do not even allow yourself to be victimized or to be the perpetrator in your dream. You even need to keep your dreams more or less pure. And it's possible. We can learn there's many books out there to help you lucid dream, many tricks, many tips to help you get there.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. So, but nonetheless, the other thing I kind of wanted to bring up really quickly is what true Christ means to us. And you know, and what we feel it potentially means when it comes to our spiritual evolution and how we go forward from here. And one of the biggest things I want to say, what true Christ means to me, is true Christ is the balancing between the hemispheres of the brain, the sun and the moon energy within us all. Diana said in our show last week how Christ is that middle pillar between that sun and that moon, you know, that masculine and that feminine. Because when we look at the divine itself, and we look at how and when we talk about the divine, the highest of the most high, we're looking at a unification. We're looking at you know, a unification of energies, a unification of the subjective focal points that we all are. This is what we're all ultimately tied to, and Christ is that unification. All right, to me, you know, Christ is also embodying the true spiritual teachings, the basic fundamental spiritual teachings, loving thy neighbor as you love yourself, you know, having that sense of community with the other people around you, especially even the ones who are asleep, guys. You know, that's something, you know, even if we're going by the canonical text, you know, we listen to when Christ said, forgive them, Father, for they not know what they do, or they don't know what they do. And that's how we have to, if we're talking about true Christ, and that's how we have to approach everything. You know, we can't look at ourselves especially, you know, what modern Christians do now. They look at themselves as higher or better than the average person. No, we have to take those words of Christ, forgive them, Father, for they not know what they do, and we have to apply that to our interactions with other people. True Christ to me is also embodying all of those principles into one being, ourselves, this subjective focal point. So that's what true Christ is to me. True Christ is the unifier, it's the awakener, it's the revolutionary that exists within us all. It's the embodying the principles of love, true love, and spiritual alignment to these higher spiritual principles, and embodying all of that within us. And it's in the way that we treat others and how we welcome others to our table. It's in the way that we communicate with others as well. That's what true Christ is to me. Now, Diana, let's talk about what it is to you.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to paint a visual, because we're emanations of many energy streams, many energy streams. And let's take into consideration that Christ is an original entity. He's one of the aeons. He's just an OG. And we are coming down and we are streaming together, and that prints us. But in that streaming, in that we have our higher selves, we have all these different things. But one thing that overlaps streaming down upon everybody is the Christ energy. That Christ energy is coming through all of us to be part, if not like probably the glue that holds all the other emanations down inside this one vehicle. Like that's when you can get really crazy about death, because when you die, who am I when I die? Which one is the one? And that's the witness. And well, who's the witness? And that's where we can get really philosophical about it. But we do emanate with and through and in that Christ energy to come down into this space. So, and it's there to help us. It's there to be utilized. It's there to be a part of us. It's there probably to make us that image of God, that why we are made in thy image, because Christ consciousness is an emanation, or the pure existence of a highest God being to us. It's not the all of the all, but it is certainly a very, very, very strong feature of it as it starts to fractal out and fractal out. So that right there makes it very, very important. And I wrote another thing, gone. Oh, androgyny. And then so in that middle pillar, it's the Heros Gamos, which if you know your alchemical terms, the Heros Gamos is the masculine and the feminine, the divine union. So it's completely logical to assume that that Christ energy is neither male nor female. I've heard people, like, they always talked about it like it was male before, but the evangelical churches that I was going to when I was trying to be Christian there for a while ago, they would refer to the Holy Spirit as female, which was nice because they were allowing the female. It was a way of bringing the female back into Christianity from the Protestant lens because they removed it. But still, I actually think that Christ energy, it's made a big deal about the androgyny, the middle pillar, because that Christ energy is a space of God where it is both male and female together. And that's why, like you said, uniting the two sides of the brain, the left and the right, the masculine and feminine, the hemi-syncing of the self is found within that Christ consciousness energy. So for me to embody it and to live within it and to seek it and to learn about it and all the things of the expansion going on with this Christ consciousness energy in my own life, and now passionately bringing it to everybody here, is to bring you the highest sort of joy and bliss to get your hands on. Because there's a lot of things in this metaphysical world that are great to learn for logic, for expansion and things like that. But if we're looking for happiness and bliss and joy and brotherhood among man, is in the Christ energy. So for me, it's pragmatism to actually embody this light. I've gone down many roads. I've looked many places. And one thing I'm coming to learn about is that the repeating things are what you want to get your hands on. The things in your life that repeat. You want to check those out. And maybe they're there like Christ for good, to be this embodiment for your life to make it better. Sometimes they're just loops you need to close out, and they're whatever they are, like my old calls to witchcraft, probably from an old life as a witch, and that needed to be circled around to actually be like, nobody burned me alive this time, but I was actually able to logically conclude that is not smart to be a witch, just given the laws of the universe and how all that works. That's not smart. The smartest thing is actually to be pure, to thine own self, to seek the highest path, and that comes in to Christ, because that's just the smartest way to manifest the most happiest life in this earth. And that's what it comes down to for me. And how can you not spread the word? It's contagious.
I dig it. No, 100%, 100%. And I resonate with all of your points too, Diana. You know, it's living in our true authenticity as well. Like, you know, that's something that I've talked about so much, you know, not just on my show, but on your show as well. And I like how we kind of dived into, you know, what real sin is, and it's depriving ourselves of that true authenticity, you know, and we have it within us all to achieve such amazing things and to grow at such an exponential rate and to cultivate and foster our connection with our eternal divine nature and Christ consciousness as well. And it's honestly going to be what I feel future humanity has, you know, this innate connection with Christ consciousness, this divine energy that exists within us. And ultimately, like you were saying with the Heros Gamos, it's that unifier, it's that hemisync as well. And that's ultimately something I feel that we're seeing the masculine and the feminine energy start to go towards. They're coming towards this synergy. You know, we've talked about the dueling dance of the divine masculine, not just on my show, but the spiritual panel as well. And ultimately, what I foresee happening is this hemisync. There's going to be this different synergy, this new unification. And we can even see these aspects of Christ playing out into our lives, manifesting not only into our subjective experience, but this collective experience as well. And I think this is what it means by Christ returning. You know, we're looking at this emergence of this awakening. We look at, who's not to say that the awakening itself that we're all undergoing right now isn't an aspect of this return of Christ energy, of this Christ consciousness, you know. And this is just something we're starting to see as far as it manifesting within ourselves, manifesting in our collective sphere. And that's why I do think that the return of Christ is not going to be a single individual, as a lot of people think it's going to be. I do think the return of Christ is going to be within us all on a mass scale. And, you know, I'm even going to kind of, you know, dive into, a lot of people might have not seen this, but there was a movie Jay Weidner did. It was called Kalki, The Last Avatar, right? But in this movie, Kalki's almost like a Christ figure. And Kalki ends up returning through many people as opposed to just one person. So we can take this example, like we talked about on our show last week, on how like every time the higher beings or the ions have sent back one person, what happens? That one person ends up getting worshipped. Things get kind of muddied up, messed around. So that's why I think this time it's not going to be just one solo person. We're going to have a return within us in mass from an energetic standpoint, and this is ultimately going to destroy that worship factor, and it's going to bring forth an embodying of these spiritual principles.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why we need to take that word worship off the table and like invent
100%.
a new term. So when we play the music in front, and maybe one day we'll get to be doing it live, and that used to be called worship. When you go to an evangelical church, it's called worship, right? Well, what are you doing when you worship? You are taking it's a free will universe, so do it if you want, but I wouldn't advise it. You are taking your energy and handing it over. And what's Christ going to do with that energy? You're not actually sending that energy to Christ, because Christ is complete. Christ is the completed circle. Christ is all. At a highest degree, the fact that we can't touch past it. So there's nothing we could do to make Christ better. Christ is completion of self. So don't worship Christ. Don't worship anybody or anything. That take that out of your vocabulary, take that out of your being. And even like I said earlier, when you're praying, be careful. You want to pray from a place of command and demanding, but with love and light, and with like just from control of this. You can ask for things. I don't usually ask, though. I tell. And that's how you really want to do it, because the all is mind. So you want to show your mind and that 95% subconscious self that's also just as much God, if not more, because it's 95, that you know. So when you want something, and then you also have to truly, truly, truly believe it. And that Christ energy space is not the end all be all. You could get lost in false light if you just sat around with that as your only goal, because that's not living the physical human life. And God came here to live a physical human life. So it's just going to be something that you keep with you like a bestie. It's going to be something you want to keep alive in your heart space, to be with you, to help you be discerning. It's a helper to help you feel into because you'll feel it. Like when you want to learn how to be more sovereign and discerning, you're feeling into that space. So if you get a tickle, that's a yes, like, or however it feels for you. For me, it's like a brightening and expanding and like a yes. I can imagine the glowing heat, where a no is like a sinking. It's like, ugh. It's like an abandoning, a leaving, a dropping. And you start to learn, it might be different for you, but you want to learn the yeses and the nos. And the Christ space, when you pick the yes, it'll brighten up and it'll take you to the next step and the next step and the next step. So it's a friend, it's a leader, it's a guide, it's a partner, but you still have a lot of work to do on your own. But when you utilize this energy correctly, without dogma, so I don't mean correctly as my way is the way, I mean what feels right to you, because it could be very valid that the way I have Christ is not the same as the way you're going to have Christ. I'm an extremely fiery Sagittarius, but you might be a very watery Cancer. Like my husband finds healing from listening to his boo-hoo music that like kills me. I'm like, oh, I'm dying, turn it off. But he loves it. It heals and refreshes his watery soul. So everybody has their own places that's going to enlighten the soul and bring you to those higher and higher places, because it's a spiral up. It's a journey, but it's an ascension up. If you follow that Christ light as your guiding beacon of yes, 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 in a world of infinite possibilities, it's beyond helpful.
Absolutely. No, I resonate with what you said about the emotional music. I totally get it. My wife is the same way. She likes,
she's also
yeah. So no, definitely. Well, Diana, do you have any final thoughts before we head off today?
No, just that today went great. And I'm just going to ask everyone, and if you've ever watched my channel, you know I never asked this for Transcending Ascension. I'm not doing it today. But we're starting the Church of True Christ from scratch. So if you could do us a solid here and go follow its Twitters and the YouTube we made, check out the website if you want, and just let's build it up here, because eventually you're probably all our metaphysical friends and we love and enjoy you all, but eventually we do want to start reaching into actual Christianity, because their numbers are enormous and they need to hear the truth as well. That will unbox humanity like you wouldn't believe and send us into the world we're all hoping for at rapid speed. So if you could like and follow the Twitter and the YouTube to start building this up today. We want physical locations one day. We want to help people heal. We want to have full immersion baptisms filled with sound healing and copper and crystals to just actually help you all heal like that. So you don't have to go through the years of upgrading and alchemizing like Stephen and I had. We want to bring this to people as fast as possible because the energies are here now. The ability is here now. The technology is here now. So please like and follow, and thank you for tuning in today. This was great.
I absolutely second that. Please like and follow. You know, I feel in a lot of ways we were under some adversity doing this today. So I want to, you know, I think this is a great episode. I definitely want to say that I apologize if I wasn't on my A game today. I woke up this morning with a really bad kink in my neck, and I feel like that was something trying to put a halt to what we were doing today. But nonetheless, no, please like, follow, and subscribe. My final message would be this. Guys, true Christ is here. It has returned. It is within us all. It is an internal savior, not an external savior. When we look at Christianity in its truest state, it is very empowering. It lacks the control and the manipulation that today's modern Christianity has. And we look at how metaphysics actually complements the Christian faith, and it works together in a synergistic way that can help us truly develop that connection with Christ, and it can truly help us create that most joyful, abundant life. So guys, my biggest thing I can say to everybody today is to have some sovereignty and some discernment with your spiritual evolution, especially if you're a Christian. Don't be afraid to look towards the other books that might not be in the King James Version, that might not be in the current version you're reading, because there's a lot of goodness there. There's a lot of things that, you know, that weren't highlighted in the canonical text. I mean, in these other gospels, Jesus talks about meditation, fasting, you know, all of these different things that a lot of us in the spiritual community hold to us as our way to connect with the divine. So don't stifle yourself. Don't view the church as a source of authority when it comes to deciphering the scriptures. Okay, you have the ability within yourself, all right, to interpret and decipher these in the way that is meant for you to see, not the way somebody else wants you to see. Okay, and on top of that as well, understand that embodying the teachings is going, if you want to worship Christ, this is what I'm going to say: embody his teachings. Don't worship him as an external savior, worship him as an internal one. All right, because as Christ has said many times, okay, the kingdom of God is within you and it's without you. And because Christ exists in the kingdom of God, does he not? And if the kingdom of God is within you and without you, that means Christ is not only within you, he is also without you in this existence. So look at it that way, guys. Embody instead of worship. Okay, this is going to be key to healing yourself further and to truly doing what Christ wanted us to do here. Okay, so think of it that way, guys. Those are my final words for today. Thank you again for joining us for the Church of True Christ. This is our first Sunday sermon. Let's close out with just some gratefulness, a prayer of gratefulness for everybody here. As of course, you know, we're all very grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be sitting next to Diana doing this. I'm grateful for everybody who's listening right now. So we're going to do just a small little gratefulness prayer to close out this sermon. So if you guys would like to join me real quick. Divine consciousness, I'm grateful for all of the abundance that is bestowed upon me in this life. I am grateful for this connection that I have fostered with you. this deep personal connection that helps me get closer to my true nature as who I am, that helps me be the best human being that I can be here, and that helps me draw myself closer to my most joyful, abundant life. I'm grateful for Christ. I'm grateful for this energy, and I'm grateful for everybody who sat down here and heard what we had to say today. And I'm grateful for any seed that we planted within the minds and the hearts of anybody who sat and listened today. And of course, I am most grateful for this breath that I took this morning to continue this life. So, guys, I want to thank everybody for joining us for the Church of True Christ, our first Sunday sermon. We will be back next week. We will have some different topics to discuss, some different subject matter. We're working on presentations as well. We're working on quite a few things. So we'll see what is in store for us next Sunday. And other than that, anything else you want to add, Diana?
No, that's perfect. Thank you for everyone for being here, and we will see you next week.
All right. Can you hang out and chat for a sec after we're done? Perfect. Alrighty, guys. Thank you, and have yourselves a wonderful, happy Sunday.
Bye for now.